My very special guest today is an Australian icon, a dinky die, beauty bottler bonza grouse, all-round top bloke, and true blue troubadour to boot.
Wow.
The quintessential Aussie bush balladeer. Oh, and he can sing a bit too. It's a big city. Welcome to John Williamson.
Hi, Mark. Nice to be here.
John, I mentioned in the introduction, True Blue. You're very passionate about the Australian language. Do you think our uniquely Australian language is dying?
Well, not if you get around the bush. It's certainly not. No, that's changing. But no, I think as long as we keep in contact with the bush, because if we stay in Dixon Street or something, in Sydney or or in the eastern suburbs, it probably will get lost. But I think as long as Aussies get around, and we are nomads, we get around a lot. You find Victorians in Alice Springs, you find people from Darwin in Victoria. People get around a lot in Australia, I reckon, more than most countries. So I think that'll keep, as long as we're living in the bush at some time, I think it'll keep our fairly Aussie sort of style happening. I'm sure of it.
They're obviously finding it pretty unique overseas at the moment with where the bloody hell are you?
Yeah. Oh, it's a good idea. I think it's very strange that the English would object to that. I mean, they come up with the most raw television shows you'd ever see.
And now the Canadians are worried about the word hell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was in this morning.
There
Tell me, the ocker, does he really exist anymore?
Well, yeah, of course. I suppose ocker describes someone who's almost an exaggerated Australian, but I don't think we have to describe it as ocker. I think the word ocker is almost being embarrassed about our accent. I don't think we have to be embarrassed about it at all. We should be very proud of it.
What do you like about the accent so much?
Oh, it's just ours, and it's very unique. I think we often tend to forget that how few people there are that really are Australian. In the way they sound, and for instance, how many people actually live in the bush. There's probably only maybe 1 million people. So that's 1 million people who are actually bush people in Australia, in the world, and they're very unique. So I think we should be proud of anything that is uniquely ours.
You've been a huge voice for the man on the land for many, many years. Do you think city folk have any real idea of what it's like to live in the bush?
Oh, I think since that, way back when we had Farm Aid, I think that was a bit of a turning point. I know a lot of bush people imagine that we don't care about, or the city people don't care about what's going on out there. But on the other hand, the bush people probably don't care about the factory workers either. It goes both ways. But I think there has been a lot more togetherness ever since that Farm Aid thing happened, and now with just recently we've had the disaster up at Innisfail. I think that's going to bring us even more together. So. I think it's people are aware of what's going on. Not everybody, but I think it's not like in the old days.
The media makes a lot of fuss about phrases they jump on. There's sea change and now tree change. Do you think it's a real thing that's happening?
Well, I think it's a good thing if it is, because one of the biggest problems is too many people living on the coast and in the big cities. It creates a lot of we're going to end up flooding more country with dams so they can live there. I think that the more we can do to disperse the population, decentralise, I think the better. So if people get out in the bush, and it was recently someone said that there are a lot more happier people in the bush than there are in the city, so there must be something good about it.
We've talked about the country. Now let's talk about your music, country music. Your new album's approaching 70,000 sales. How did you come up with the title Chandelier of Stars?
Well, that's pretty obvious, I guess. If you go out into the outback and walk away from the campfire at night when there's no clouds, well, the stars, there's just more stars than you ever imagined. It's almost white with stars, But I actually came up with that line just before sunup. There's that period of time where there's only a few stars left, and sometimes the sky is so clear that these stars are almost hanging in front of you, like a chandelier, almost like you grab hold of them. In fact, I remember when I was driving the tractor years ago, I thought I was being followed by a UFO or something, and it happened to be Venus. It was just so bright and big,
You mentioned in some of the cover notes that your final inspiration for it was when you were in Derby. Is that right?
For the song, yeah. Well, I had that line in my head for years, but I was sitting on like an old-fashioned shearer's cot in a bed in the Spinifex Hotel, and that was the deluxe room. the boys, they reckon they were lucky to get a room at all, and I was a bit disappointed in the venue that they'd put us in. It turned out pretty good. We had a good night and a finish, and all having a drink in the bar with everybody. But I guess that at those times is when you start to feel, what are you doing out here? You know, away from home and away from your family and wife and all the rest of it. So that's when these lines came too. So actually, I had 2 bad nights on the trip, and I ended up writing 2 good songs. So I always look on the bright side, eh?
I know what you're talking about, because I flew down from the top right to Broome and stopped at Derby on the way, just at sunset. It's one of the most amazing sunsets I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah, it's a lovely area. The Kimberley's just amazing. Well, the baobab trees are what get to me.
Yeah, just a complete view, isn't it? Little Girl from the Dryland. These are very personal lyrics. It's track 1 on the CD. It's about the difficult childhood of your wife, Mary Kay. Is it hard to expose such personal, painful memories?
Well, I made sure she was cool with it. And her dad was always open about his alcoholism. He started AA in Gundawindi when, in fact, he didn't. We reckon in the finish he hadn't really given up the grog at all. So he was a bit of an old con artist, old George. A lovely old fella, really. But like many people who came back from the war, they hit the bottle when they came home. He got the soldier settlers block out there at on the Taluna Plain. Anyone that lives out that way will know what I'm talking about. It's halfway between Moree and Gundawindi, basically, west of the highway. No trees, and well, you can imagine Mary Kay doesn't have fond memories of the bush. That wasn't a very romantic place to live. It was very dusty and isolated. They did correspondence at one stage, and I often remember her telling me that if the insurance agent came out or something, that's about the only visitors they got. They'd hide under their mum's dress. They were that shy from people, So it was more about that as much as anything, just the isolation. And she's no longer a bush girl. She'd much rather live in the city, much rather go overseas on holidays and all the rest of it, like a lot of people.
Making up for lost time. How did you meet her?
Oh, well, I actually met her on the land property next door. They had a Christmas Eve party, 1969. And she'd only just come back from boarding school, and there she was, standing by a tank stand. Very unromantic, but very beautiful girl. And I was a few years older, and that's what happened. Christmas Eve on neighbouring property. They always had the Christmas Eve party, so she'd probably been running around the lawn as one of the kids for years, and I didn't even know.
So, is this the first song you've written about it?
No, I've been lots of songs, yeah. You and My Guitar is probably the most well-known, about the battle I've had, between my 2 favourite ladies. They're both shaped like this.
How do you write the songs? Do you come up with the lyrics first, then the melody?
Yeah, not most of the time I do, Mark, yeah. Because a lyric to me, I'm more about lyrics than I am melody, so I always want to write a melody that fits the lyric, in mood and in rhythm and etc. So it's got to sell the lyrics rather than, it astounds me how, like in the old musical days, it generally was a lovely melody was written, and then the lyricist came in to try and fit something to it, which is a difficult job, I think. I mean, I can do it, but I don't think the lyrics are ever as good. They tend to don't come out naturally.
When do you write?
Anytime at all, but probably more when I'm relaxed. I certainly write a lot while I'm driving around the country, and I'm a relaxed driver. I guess it comes from driving tractors for 10 hours at a time, that I get quite comfortable driving on the road, and that's when you start to get into your brain.
One of the songs on the album is The Camel Boy, which you wrote about the Aboriginal painter Albert Namatjira, who you nominated as one of your top 10 Australian heroes. Why is that?
Well, he's a genius as far as painting. He's a watercolourist, and I really believe that he was the one that showed us the true colours of the centre, whereas people like Sidney Nolan and Drysdale and those sort of people, whenever they painted the outback, it was about misery and heat and loneliness, and virtually our unattachment to the centre, our fear of it, I think. They used to paint skeletons of dead animals and all this sort of stuff, whereas when you see Albert's paintings, he's painting paradise, and that's what he saw, and that was his home. And I think we're starting to see it ourselves now.
Who are some of your other great Aussie heroes? If he's in the top 10, who are some of the others?
Oh, well, Don Bradman would have to be in there because he looked after his legend. May Gibbs, who was a great Aussie Sydney lady that really captured a gum leaf, you know. And if you ever, I've dabbled in art, and to capture the real spirit of a gum leaf is not that easy. But she also wrote great kids' books, and I think romanticised our bush before anyone else did, especially with the gum nuts. And I think she was way ahead of time, you know. Like there seemed to be a period after that we lost contact with the bush. We're coming back to it now.
You've also released a DVD of Chandelier of Stars, and you mentioned on the DVD that country music in the States might be losing its way. How is Australian country music different? How is it maintaining the course?
Well, it has so far, and mainly because we have, you know, it's important that we recognise the foundations of our music, and that is the original balladeer stuff that came through from Banjo Patterson, Henry Lawson. People like Slim, Dusty, Stan Coster, Buddy Williams were all huge fans of Henry Lawson and Banjo Patterson, and that was the style that they wrote. So it sort of came from that with music. So that's why I value Waltzing Matilda so much. It is our foundation song, I think. It's about our bush, it's about our battlers, it's about the underdog, and about freedom, you know. And I think as long as we keep contact with that music, and I always tend to write at least 1 or 2 tracks on every album, we can't lose our way. You know, if we do lose contact, well, then the tree will fall over and we won't have an industry.
On the DVD, there's an Aboriginal version of Waltzing Matilda. How did that one come about?
But Trevor, yeah.
Trevor Adamson.
Trevor Adamson, yeah. Well, we were out there. It was the idea of, well, I think it's a government group. I think they call it, just put together for Australia Day. It's Australia Day committee, that's right. They wanted us out there on the dawn of Australia Day at Uluru. Uluru, of course, is the area, not just the rock. And of course had to be with the permission of the local mob there, and Trevor is from that mob. And he told us that he can sing Waltzing Matilda in language. And I thought, that's fantastic, because I never realised that could happen. So I sang my version of it, and he sang his version of it, if I remember rightly, and it was a real thrill to hear him, and it was cute as well, and it was very apt, because it was all about togetherness. On that day, we had a representative of the Afghans bring in a water barrel they used to hang on the camels in the old days. We had station people bringing a saddle in. Steve Waugh was there. He put a bat into the centre, because that obviously brings people together, sport. And of course there was the music. Warren Williams and I sang Raining on the Rock together, and then Trevor sang Waltzing Matilda, and it was a really nice day and a nice gesture, and especially on the behalf of the Aborigines, who in some cases believe it was the Invasion Day. So, you know, I think it's all a good sign.
It is a fantastic version of Waltzing Matilda. Let's have a listen to it right now.
Came the squatter, mounted on his thoroughbred. Up came the troopers, 1, 2, 3. Who's the jolly jumbuck you've got in your tucker bag? You'll come a waltzing Matilda. Sing it, everybody now. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me, and his ghost may be heard as you pass by the billabong. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Last chance, bigger now. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me, and his ghost may be heard as you pass by that billabong. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Coming back to the album Chandelier of Stars, tell me about Warren Williams and the song Keeper of the Stones.
Yeah, well, Warren is from the Western Arana mob. He's in fact Albert Namatjira's great nephew. So that's how I was able to find out a bit more about Albert for the song Camel Boy. He told me that Albert was a camel boy at one stage, or regarded as such. But Warren rang me back in '96 with the idea that I would re-record my song, Raining on the Rock, with him. And it mentions Albert Namatjira too. It was all quite a coincidence. And I was wrapped in the idea, you know, because I've always really wanted to have a friend amongst a mob that still has a connection with the land, which around Hermannsburg they do. The Hermannsburg mission have handed it back. And but Warren, like most young Aborigines, have gone through that whole lack of respect for themselves, which we took away from them generations ago. And but recently he's become keeper of the stones on his mother's side, which is quite an important role. Is like the lawyer of his mob. And those stones hold secrets and messages and stories from generations back, 1,000 generations possibly. I'm not allowed to see them because I'm not initiated. But I wrote the song about Warren and what he's been through with the petrol and the grog and all that. He admits he's quite open about that whole thing. In fact, he's now becoming quite a part in helping the other kids get through that out in those areas. But it's not just about him, of course. The first verse, I say, if you take me from my land, you leave me with no soul. Well, I feel exactly the same way. I feel as attached to the land as he does, I think. And But I dedicate the song to all those who've been through what he's been through, you know.
Do you reckon our Indigenous people are getting a fair go?
That's a tough one because a lot of it's got to be up to them, you know. I think we in our ignorance a lot of times are doing our best, I think, to give them the opportunity to come out of themselves. But when there is that lack of respect, until that comes back, it's a bit of a vicious circle, you know. So I think we can do more, but it's not as though we haven't been trying, I believe. It's often maybe not the right direction, but that's often in hindsight. But you know, the way Warren has come good just through touring with me, the way he's come out of his shyness and so much more confident now, it can often come down to just helping people on an individual basis, you know.
You co-wrote the song Desert Child with Warren and sing the duet on the CD. That's a rather unique collaboration for you, John.
Yeah, well, we've discovered with 2 or 3 other songs before that he's got a very high husky voice, and I can't sing in his octave, so I tend to, in the chorus, to sing an octave below him, which is really in unison, and it's become quite a unique sound, I think. And I'm so pleased with it actually that we're determined to put a whole album together, with the two of us using that as a kind of a one voice, and I guess it's got a nice message too.
What's your personal favourite on Chandelier of Stars?
Good question. Probably Camel Boy, because it not only says something about how we mistreated Albert, and we've got to come out of that, admit it, and then come out of it, because he was the first bloke to be able to first Aborigine to be allowed to become a citizen in Alice Springs, and then he was allowed to buy a house. His family wasn't allowed in the house because they weren't citizens. A lot of shameful stuff there, but it's also, I have a little dig about the Republic there, because I say, you know, they dressed him up in a white suit to visit the Queen, and I don't think he was all that impressed about that idea, but he did it. He was a very gracious man. He was a reconciliator. He wanted us to come together. So the song is also about taking down the Queen's picture and putting up a landscape of Albert Namatjira. So it's quite a Republican statement.
I was enjoying researching this and listening to the album and then watching the DVD as well, and it came to me an idea. What about a John Williamson karaoke DVD?
Oh, well, it's not a new idea. That has been every song we record, we mix off a backing track just for that purpose in case it does come about. But yeah, I suppose there are enough sing-along tracks amongst my 300 odd songs. We could probably make a karaoke, but how many people would actually put the coin in the slot for my songs, I don't know.
Well, going by the sales of Chandelier of Stars, it sounds like a fair few, John. You wrote in the cover notes, "At this stage of my career, I feel I am at the crossroads. Is it all that I can do, or will this be the last time?" Well, your response will help me choose which road I take from this junction. Since then, you've won 3 golden guitars at the 2006 Tamworth Country Music Festival, including Album of the Year for Chandelier of Stars, highest selling album for Chandelier of Stars, and Bush Ballad of the Year for Bells in a Bushman's Ear. You're approaching 70,000 in sales. Have you decided which road to take?
Well, I think I'm on the right track about the sounds of it, so I'll go straight through the junction. And I was fair dinkum when I said that, because I guess, after 36 years in the business, I'm just turned 60. I started to wonder whether I'll wind down, and I have other interests, and really, if I'd been discouraged with the response to this album, then I would have been a bit lost to know where I'm going. But I think this album is definitely the direction I want to keep going. I hope I can keep improving on that now, because you never stop improving if you're keen to do it. And I'll never stop running out of songs if I'm prepared to go out there looking for them.
John, thanks for talking to me today. And before you go, could you please do us the honour of playing us a song from Chandelier of Stars?
All right. Thank you. Nice to talk to you, Mark. Well, this is the song I've dedicated to the balladeers in country music. It's called Bells in the Bushman's Ear. Don't knock the old hillbillies, people love 'em out in the bush. Simple tunes with words that you can hear. You don't need complications where hearts are kind and true. Just words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. Maybe you need to stroll down a little dirt track, slow down a walk in time with a drover. Hear the wind play a tune on the cypress pine. You don't need beer and you don't need wine, just words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. Like the hovering kite that whistles, telephone wires that hum, thunderstorms that rumble loud and clear. He smells the rain that's coming, hear the cocky screech and yell, words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. Maybe you need to stroll down a little dirt track, slow down a walk in time with a drover. Rattle an enamel mug with a spoon, talk to your dog or talk to the moon with words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. Yeah, rattle an enamel mug with a spoon, throw him a bone and make him swoon, words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. No, don't knock the old hillbillies, people love 'em out in the bush. A campfire is no place for rock and roll. Proof is in the pudding, they don't come and go. Images embedded in your soul. Maybe you need to stroll down a little dirt track, slow down a walk in time with a drover. And when it rains you run amok, dance on the back of a cattle truck. Yeah, words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. Peaches swimming inside a tin, mutton chops that grease your chin, words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear. Words that ring like bells in a bushman's ear.